In a totally unrelated milestone, Washington will hit a $1 trillion milestone this year. That is the interest we pay every year on our debt. This is not our debt. This is the interest we pay every year on our debt. This is the extra money we pay because we have debt. $1 trillion. That's our Pentagon budget. Aren't milestones good things? No, I think I've just proven they can be bad things too. Pay to who? Well, to people who have bought treasury bonds, the people who buy our debt. Interest payments were only $345 billion, only $345 billion, back in 2020. And they have now tripled. Yippee! In just 5 years, they tripled. What's the end game here for America? We nuke ourselves, maybe? Possibly? I think an expansionist spree is the only solution. Oh, we're getting to that. We're getting to that. Are we going to end up being literally owned by another country? No, it doesn't work that way. The majority of U.S. debt, that is to say the treasury bonds, are held by American citizens and corporations. What is going to happen, though, is that in order to pay the interest on this debt, we're going to have to sell more and more and more of our debt, more of those bonds, in order to raise more money to pay the interest on the bonds that we've already sold. This very rapidly spirals out of control. It already has. We're already in the spiral, mind you. The interest payments tripled in 5 years. We're in the spiral right now. As it becomes more clear that we are unable to pay our debts, the only way we can pay our debts is by... Because the traditional gamble was that, sure, America is increasing its debt and its interest payments. However, the American economy grows so quickly that as a proportion of our GDP, our debt is not actually increasing. And that's true. The idea is it's okay if a country's debt increases because if the total amount of money moving through the economy increases proportionally, the debt to GDP ratio is what really matters. The debt to GDP ratio is no longer holding strong, folks. See, it turns out that a house of cards built on the assumption that the stock market will continue to rise by like 3% every year is not actually a good bet when, for one, sometimes the market crashes, and for two, our debt is increasing by more than 3% every year, you know? So it turned like that was bad math on both sides. Show a graph or something? Sure. Debt to GDP ratio. There. You might notice a problem. Down here in the 1980s, our debt to GDP ratio was in the ballpark of 30. So that's okay. And now it's not even a little. It spiked up due to COVID, but the real recent bump right here was due to quantitative easing, the Obama era Fed approach to dealing with the 2008 financial crisis. You might notice here the only time it's really ever meaningfully gone down was under Clinton, the one president in recent memory to run a surplus. But yeah, we're currently in the bad times. I mean, we are spiraling. We are spiraling out. QE was Bush, FYI. Okay, Obama took it nasty style. Come on. Okay, yeah. Obama did not invent quantitative easing, but undeniably after 2008 and so on and so forth. Is there any way out of this other than default and collapse? Massive wealth tax. Massive, overwhelming wealth tax. Like, we need to strangle the wealth in this country. We need to hold wealthy people by their ankles and shake them and their lunch money falls out. This country is dead unless we do that. I mean that, by the way. Like, this country is actually dead. This is not a problem that can be solved with creative accounting. This is a wall that we're running up against. The debt to GDP ratio is an active, unambiguous wall. It's right ahead, okay? And it only grows exponentially over time. As you have to borrow more and more to pay down more and more, our interest payments are $1 trillion now. $1 trillion a year. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And the worst case scenario would be if we can no longer pay our debts, our status as the global reserve currency would be challenged and our debt would be downgraded. People would no longer see American debt as a safe investment. Our treasury yields would no longer be, our bonds would no longer be considered a safe investment, and people would invest in them less because the likelihood of a payout would go down, which means we no longer have the ability to raise the money required to pay our debt without raising the interest rates even further, which means it spirals out even harder. It's the end of the world, basically. An American financial collapse, the financial collapse that I'm describing, would probably cause more human suffering in terms of deaths and injuries than if nuclear weapons were fired at like the top 10 biggest cities in the world. If you drop nukes on Paris, New York, New Delhi, London, etc., whatever, and just dealt with that, the amount of death that would be caused from that would be less than the consequences of an American financial collapse. That sounds pretty bad? Yeah. Check Japan's debt to GDP ratio. There are other countries that also have really bad debt to GDP ratios. America's not the only one, but America is unique. For one, we're the global reserve currency. For two, we have been rapidly increasing our debt because we have operated on the assumption that the economy would keep growing in tandem. The Japanese economy doesn't really work that way. Don't get me wrong, their national debt is a huge problem, and it's a remnant of their 1990s financial collapse. But their system right now is, compared to ours, stable compared to ours. They do have issues compared to ours. But also, they're not the global reserve currency. Their economy works very differently than ours. Very differently. I know that stuff like this is much less sensational, much less interesting than covering a recent shooting or whatever, and I can see that because, you know, there's some fluctuation in the viewership. But I want you guys to understand that what we're looking at right now is more consequential than almost anything happening day to day in the Trump administration. This, if left unaddressed, and this can only be addressed with taxation, massive taxation, will be the end of the country. It is the end. This is a greater risk than anything else happening, anything else pending in the immediate future. This is a bigger thing to worry about, in my opinion, than even climate change. Because climate change, naive as it may be of me to believe this, I really do think that is a hill we're capable of climbing. But in order to climb a hill, you need your limbs to function. You got to have your boots on tight. If America goes under in the fashion that it seems like it will, I don't think we'll be able to climb the hill. I think this will be the an American financial collapse would guarantee that the global economy is incapable of responding to the challenges that climate change would bring. That's not to say climate change isn't a serious issue. What I'm saying is that this is more immediate, which is crazy because climate change is like right here, you know? And it would just if we fix this, and the American economy was fine and we weren't at risk of this kind of collapse, I think that we could overcome climate change with excess deaths limited to hundreds of millions. I think that if American financial collapse happens, we would guarantee billions in excess deaths. You understand what I mean? I hope this is coming. I don't want to overstate my case. I really do believe this, though. I really do. Can you describe how are people going to die if the U.S. has financial collapse? Starvation in many parts of the world, famine collapse. It's the global reserve currency. So for one, like starvation would be like that. I mean, drought, the inability to allocate resources. There would be civil wars breaking out across less developed regions in the world as holdings that previously guaranteed some degree of stability fell apart. American businesses would go under, and a bunch of countries that were previously basically held together with financially extractive contracts with American businesses would fall apart. Significant portions of Latin America, North and Central Africa, Southeast Asia, these areas would essentially become like lawless overnight because the money holding these places together, it would be gone like that. That on its own would be an exceptional amount of suffering, with many, 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 many deaths. But it would also mean that in a lot of cases, we would lack the wealth and the resources necessary to overcome some of the systemic trials that climate change would demand of us. For example, powering the world with renewables is expensive. It requires stability. It requires long-term investment. It requires trust. It also requires very productive factories. And why would Chinese factories continue to produce so much in solar if they have no one to sell to? The Chinese export market would go underwater almost immediately. We're talking about like supply chain fractures, the likes of which no economist or politician or political scientist could even begin to really grasp at. I can't, certainly. I only know it would be very, very bad. That's all I can say, really. Yeah, it would take a very long time to come back from it. If you want a direct comparison, keep in mind that the Great Depression, the entire planet, and caused an unbelievable amount of suffering, and then a new age of fascism after it. And the Great Depression was caused by an economic collapse that would be a tiny fraction of what this would be. Like the Great Depression was a bank run, financial instability, etc. This would be that times 100. So just imagine what that would do to the world, okay? 2008, many global economies over for decades, and that was literally just American banks trading on subprime mortgage loans. The end of like the trustworthiness of the global reserve currency would be so much worse. And you're saying this is imminent? Unless we tax the fuck out of people, yes. That's one of the reasons why I say stuff like, I don't really care that much between a Republican winning and Gavin Newsom winning, because I don't think that either of them would fix this. Like, in a long-term sense, it kind of seems like both of those timelines sort of arrive back at the global mass death position, whereas the meaningful distinction is like, are you even capable of addressing this? And right now, Ro Khanna is the only Democrat politician who has swing, right? Who's got a little bit of sauce, who's got a little bit of, pep in his step, who is stirring up waves over a wealth tax. If Republicans win and they face this, what will they do? Just die? Well, if Democrats win and they face this, they'll also just die. No, the wealthy are building bunkers. The world's wealthiest and most powerful people all know this is coming and don't think they can do anything about it, because in order to stop it from happening, they would have to tax each other, which they're not willing to do because they're all part of the same club. So they're all building like Hawaiian survival bunkers right now. Trust me, they all know this is going to happen. All of them. I agree with the solution, but he's way overstating the problem. Modern nuclear weapons detonating the world's most populous cities would be way worse. It would also lead to financial collapse. I understand. Like, the reason I said that is because I really want to sell how bad this would be, but I want to be clear that I am not in any way being hyperbolic when I say that you could fire some of the largest nuclear weapons that we have at the highest population centers that we have, and it would do a fraction of the damage that this would cause. I really do. Like, just the number of people who would die of starvation alone. Sometimes it's really difficult to estimate these abstract numbers. Like, you know how everyone's really torn up over one woman in Minnesota getting murdered by ICE today? But earlier last year, Elon Musk oversaw an effort to defund USAID, which has at this point now killed hundreds of thousands of people and will in the long run kill millions now that they are deprived of food and basic medicine that we paid pennies on the dollar to provide them. It's stuff like that. It's the difference between a loud, news-friendly, momentous death, or many deaths in the case of nuclear weapons, versus systemic death, right? Social murder on an unimaginable scale. On the worst scale, actually, the collapse of the American economy would be the greatest mass death event in history, with no question. Yeah. Nothing else. Not the Great Depression or World War II or the Spanish flu. There's nothing else not even remotely, in all of human history, more death than anything that has ever been caused before, ever. Bro, I think that's a bit far. It's mathematically correct. Can you give 2-sentence summary of how quantitative easing got us here, lol? Okay, the basic gist of it is that, 2 sentences on quantitative easing? No, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I've talked about it before. You're gonna have to go. That's a whole thing. I am not educated enough to give a 2-sentence description of quantitative easing and why it's bad. There are probably people who are, but they know more than I do. Yeah, you're asking a lot of an illiterate person, okay? I really don't think the US is like Atlas holding up the world. It's not that we're holding up the world. It's that the global financial markets are deeply intertwined. Why do you think that the American Great Depression and the American 2008 financial crisis both caused global suffering? The dollar wasn't even the global reserve currency back when the Great Depression happened. At that point, the connection was like gold holdings, I'm being told that I own a book on this called Capitalizing by Crisis. My beautiful partner has informed me that I have such a book that I need to read. And is the AI bubble collapsing going to cause this? It's going to worsen it considerably, because when the AI bubble pops, it will drop our GDP, which will spike our GDP to debt ratio. Like, the ratio will get worse. And the worse that ratio gets, the more we have to borrow in order to pay it out. It won't necessarily cause the collapse, but it is going to be a contributing factor in the decline. All right, sorry. We got a bit out of hand with this one, but yeah, this is like the big issue for me, like the capital I issue, Is it 10 years or 20? No, nobody, there's no way of knowing. No way of knowing. No way of knowing. Can you give advice on how to survive this? Rice and beans.